Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Two Dudes Brews and Reviews podcast. This is Alex here, and on today's episode, we're talking about the 2020 Netflix original film I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Dive in with us as we attempt to decipher this surreal and disorienting movie that likely left most viewers as confused as we were. If you like what you hear, subscribe to the podcast, give us a rating, and let your friends in on the exciting music and movie conversations that we have every week. And as always, we hope you enjoy the show. Thank you for listening.
Young Getter, we're back.
What's up, man?
Just fucking mind boggled. That's all.
Yeah, this movie is pretty out there. I can't think of a better way to ring in the holidays. For those listening, it is only a few days after Christmas 2020, but I can't think of a better way to ring in the holidays, but with a movie about regret and suicide and depression.
And yeah, this movie was fucking weird. I just watched it today, and I definitely think I would have benefited from a second viewing, but I get it, and I would appreciate it if I watched it a second time because I would have that knowledge.
Yeah, the first watch is kind of a slog. I mean, it's a long movie to begin with.
Yeah. Well, at least it feels long. It's only like 2 hours long.
I mean, it's a slow moving movie. Like, there's not a whole lot of action or anything. I mean,
No.
it's mostly dialogue
and tension.
Yeah.
And weird cuts and play on cinematography and
It's okay. We'll get through it.
Jesus Christ, dude. This movie fucked my mind today.
Yeah.
Like, it made me feel so uncomfortable. Like, it was overcast today, and like I just felt so fucking isolated, like, while watching this movie. Like, it felt like my whole afternoon was just like filled with like dread. And like I had to take a few breaks while watching the movie to like eat and shit. And like my interactions with my family around the house just made me feel so fucking weird.
So it's one of those movies, like, change your whole vibe for the
Yeah.
day.
It like anytime I like said something to like anybody, I was like, I don't know, just because like the dialogue in this movie is so not coherent.
A lot of the time it isn't.
Yeah. It makes you feel so claustrophobic and like you're trying to like pay attention, but it's hard.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to grab onto any of the conversation, really.
We need to like
preface it, what the fuck's going on.
Yeah, because this movie is nearly impossible to talk about without spoiling like what it is like really about.
Yeah, we're not gonna go through this scene by scene for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like, the actual like the surface level plot is really simple. We'll get into that in a second too. But yeah, there's a lot of symbolic elements in this movie. But before we get into that, Austin, what kind of beer are we drinking today?
Yeah. We almost fucking forgot.
Thinking about this movie too much, man.
It fucked me up, bro. We're drinking the Great Lakes Brewing Company Elliot Ness Amber Lager.
How you feeling about it so far?
It's okay.
It's okay.
I mean, it's not like, this is not my type of beer, but like I'm not enjoying it.
I was just curious. Great Lakes was actually the beer that like got me into craft beer.
They were the company that like kind of expanded your horizons a little bit.
Yeah, just like I was at like a concert one time and randomly ordered a Great Lakes. At the time, I was only drinking like Yingling and Miller Lite and stuff like that. I don't know. I was like mind blown.
I mean, they're a local, not necessarily extremely local, but I mean, it's an Ohio company.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that like their whole marketing is like based around like Ohio.
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels very what's that vibe that the company gives off? Like very
I think it has like an industrial kind of vibe to it.
That's what the word I was looking for. I was gonna say like farmer.
Yeah.
Like turned businessman.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We were gonna get the Christmas ale, but they're like gone.
Yeah. It's all sold out. I mean, it is. We're post Christmas right now, but
I know at the local Kroger that there was like a wall of it at one point, and we were discussing before the podcast, wondering like if it like went to waste because it's at like a Kroger, or if like it's still in stock there. But like at the liquor store we went to, they were like, yeah, we sold it like a week ago, which is like means that they were sold out prior to Christmas and stuff.
Yeah, I was a little bummed out about that, but
I've never had it. I know it's
good stuff.
Yeah. Well, like, what does it taste like, or like, what's the flavor? Is it like, what kind of beer is it? Because I've never had it.
I mean, now that I think about it, I can't guarantee that you would have liked it because I feel like it's like a wintry Oktoberfest.
Okay.
Like it's like got the spices like the nutmeg and cinnamon and shit like that, but it's less dark than a Oktoberfest is.
Is it like, is it have any like sort of wintergreen flavor to it or anything? Like any sort of like mint?
Not that I remember.
Anything? Because when I think of like a Christmas ale, I'm thinking like either you're tasting like something near eggnog, like very cinnamony.
No, it's not quite like that.
It's nothing like super unique. Like it's just like a limited run type deal.
Yeah, pretty
Like,
much.
okay.
Like other beer companies make Christmas ales, but Great Lakes has my favorite one.
Okay.
So yeah, today we're talking about the movie I'm Thinking of Ending Things. It's one of the few movies that came out in 2020 that I've seen. So I felt like maybe we should talk about something that came out in this calendar year.
I don't know if I mentioned it on the last podcast, but I kind of went into this because I watched the trailer before I watched the movie, and I had like not even heard of this movie or like known any like sort of marketing for it. I don't get on Netflix very often, and when I do, it's usually like sharing like a movie with like the lady or something. I don't know. It's just never shown up in like her recommended or anything either. But I watched the trailer and like I went into this like leaving the last podcast thinking it was like a dark comedy.
I remember you asking me that.
Yeah.
And I was like,
no,
there's not much to laugh at in this movie.
It wasn't like, because I was thinking it would be like dark comedy, something near Stranger Than Fiction. Like when I heard I'm Thinking of Ending Things, I'm thinking like my initial thing is like I'm thinking of ending things like kill myself, but like it would have like a funny twist on it or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like because I had no frame of like reference.
That's what I thought it was going into.
Well, and then I watched the trailer. I immediately was like, holy shit, this movie is going to give me so much anxiety. Because like based on the trailer, I was like, I don't know if I want to watch this. Because this movie is not a movie I would watch on my own. It fucked me up.
I feel like the trailer kind of gives a like a horror vibe, sort of. Although the movie's not a horror movie either.
No, but it felt like it the whole time I was watching it. And
there are parts that feel like a horror movie.
Well, I thought it like, because when I was watching it and like looking at description of the movie, like I looked up like Wikipedia stuff and like Google searching it, and it was said like psychological horror and like thriller. And I was like, well, I was thinking the whole time, like in the first like act of the movie, like first half hour, 45 minutes, I'm thinking like, okay, what's like the twist on this reality?
Yeah.
And because it felt very suspenseful even from the beginning.
Even when like nothing's happening really.
Yeah. Should we go ahead and just like hop into like what's really happening? And then like, I feel like this is the best way to explain the movie. Well, or like, should we just like lay the groundwork and then like work backwards until we like
maybe we should lay the groundwork first.
But like the whole point of the movie is a woman, and which her name is Lucy, supposedly.
Sometimes, yeah.
Dude, what the fuck, bro? and then Jake, which is only named Jake, so I assume he's a real person, which we'll get into that. But yeah, Jake and Lucy are gonna go visit his parents, and like they've only been dating for like 6 weeks, and
she has some doubts about their relationship.
Yeah, like Jake's a nice guy, but I don't really want to date him.
This movie was directed by Charlie Kaufman.
Yeah.
He's like famous for movies like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Which I've seen, which I love.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite movies of all time. He also did Being John Malkovich, which I don't think you've seen, have you?
I was going to watch it recently, but I didn't have a chance to.
That one's pretty weird too. It's weirder than Eternal Sunshine.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think he has writing credits on other movies, like and directing credits. But I haven't seen anything else by him except for Eternal Sunshine, John Malkovich, and then now this.
I was going to say, because my only frame of reference is Eternal Sunshine, and this movie is much, much darker.
Yeah, this one, I mean, it's a lot darker, and it's a lot more surreal, too.
Yeah, even though Eternal Sunshine is surreal, it does have, like, some comedic twist to it at times, which is, like, even though, like, the whole point of the movie is that Jim Carrey is trying to get rid of his memory of his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And it's, like, super surreal at times, like... This one had like no frame of reference of like what was happening really, like because in that movie you understand what's happening like the whole time, like essentially like you're going through all these memories, and like this movie it's like you're trying to figure it out the whole time.
Yeah,
all while being disoriented by dialogue and scene changes, cutting, and I don't know. It just, to me, this movie it felt less enjoyable, I guess. At least like I didn't feel very
like entertained.
yeah. Not to say that I didn't like it, but
Yeah.
but it's still it's a different.
I went into this knowing what your reaction would be. Kind of.
Yeah.
I thought it would lead to more interesting discussion because it is kind of a
it definitely will.
like after my first viewing, I went into it. I didn't even know it was directed by Charlie Kaufman. I didn't know what the plot was. I hadn't seen a trailer. Like Olivia was my wife, Olivia. She was just like, "There's this movie out. We should watch it." So we did, and she always falls asleep when we watch movies. So I'm usually stuck like laying in bed, like watching them while she's asleep. And yeah, the first like 40 minutes or so seem kind of like grounded in some reality. And then like
I agree.
Then it hits a point where like things get really weird really fast.
Yeah. It's like after dinner.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. On my first viewing, like the movie completely lost me at that point. Like I was like disinterested.
I was gonna say at this point in the movie, not that like I wasn't interested, but it was very hard for me to like have like groundwork in my head to navigate like what was happening. It was like, so we should just say that like there's a lot that we'll probably miss while we're talking about this, but like the whole car ride is like leading up to getting to his parents' house is like cut with like her like narration in her head. Like it's very like introspective and like she's like, oh, Jake's a nice guy, I'm thinking of ending things, and then like they're like talking over top of it at times, and like he's cutting in the first few minutes of the movie, he's like, what did you say?
Like he hears her thoughts.
He can hear what she's thinking.
Yeah.
And I know this is a book, and I'd be really interested to like know how it's written at least. Like because like in a book, like things can be written in a way where things move a little bit more seamlessly.
Yeah.
Like in this movie, I think they like at least attempted to the way like, for example, like if a book says then this happened or dialogue, and then like you're kind of just like your mind is like seamlessly imagining things as you're reading, and it's like you're not so visually, it's not visual, so like you're moving along.
Yeah, you're just filling in the spaces yourself.
Exactly. And then this movie, I think they almost like the scene breaks like were like that, and you don't get that filler. Do you understand? You kind of understand what I'm saying? It's hard to understand what you're not.
I think there's a reason for that, and we haven't really gotten into it yet.
Yeah.
I guess like we should mention the first like 40 minutes of this movie are legit just like them in the car talking.
Yes.
It's just a long conversation.
And like they're trying to get to like, I don't know, like I felt like I remember writing down like this couple has no connection.
Their relationship feels really cold.
Yeah. For sure. And like I don't know, I felt like they weren't like in love or whatever. And I was trying to figure out what was happening, like as far as how do I describe it?
Like what? Like where like it's heading?
Because you're getting cuts of like this old janitor.
Yeah.
Throughout. And there's actually in the first few minutes of the movie, there's an old man looking down on the street at her.
Yeah.
And I was like, who the fuck is that?
Because it's a really weird cut. Like that seems completely unrelated to like what you're watching most of the time.
And I figured like these little things littered throughout would make sense in the end, which it did. But it felt like I was just trying to figure out in this first 40 minutes, like, okay, we're leading up to this. So like going into it thinking it'd be more horror, like thinking like, who's going to be the bad guy?
I was thinking the same thing on my first watch.
Is it going to be Jake or is it going to be his parents? Yeah. And like initially I thought it was his parents for sure.
I thought that like Lucy was like being led to like her death or something.
Exactly.
But it's not, it doesn't go in that direction whatsoever.
No.
Not even close.
Yeah, and I think even like the last 20 minutes of the movie, it's like, what the fuck is about to happen kind of thing. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to navigate.
I guess like we can't really start talking about things till we like break what the twist is. Yeah. I guess it's not like the kind of twist that like some movies will be like, bam, what a twist or something. Like this movie is kind of like psychedelic and surreal all the way through, so you know something's not right.
Yeah, it's not like because we've seen Psycho, and the twist is at the end, and it like everything's wrapped up, like, oh my god, even though like you know that Norman's the killer and all that shit, or like at least you know that Norman has something to do with it, and we talked about it, but it's like, okay, let's just fucking break it. Okay?
Yeah, we gotta break dice.
We gotta do it.
So this entire movie, all the scenes with like Lucy and Jake and his parents and anybody else, they're all a weird mixture of memories and fantasy and regret that this janitor is thinking about like while he's on the job. We'll get more into it, like how the movie shows us this.
Yeah. It's hard to talk about it without saying that, though.
Yeah, like you have to know that because like you saw it one time.
Yeah.
This is like fresh in your mind. You just watched the shit today.
Yeah. Oh, it's fucking fresh.
I've seen it twice, and I didn't really like it on my first viewing, and then I really liked it on my second viewing.
I don't want to watch it twice, though. It made me so fucking uncomfortable.
It is a really tense movie, and like it makes like really like mundane things tense.
Yeah.
In a way.
Because like the dialogue in the car is like almost like they're talking, like it seems like they're waiting for their turn to talk type of deal. And like, I don't know, man. It just, the way these two people interact doesn't make any fucking sense to me.
Like, what do you mean by that?
Like it's not how a couple communicates to me. Like even people that like maybe don't like haven't been dating that long, it's like neither of them were excited to like be in each other's presence at any point.
They both seem like miserable people.
Yeah.
Kinda.
And like obviously Jake is super miserable. And like, but like Lucy just seems like, holy shit, I don't want to break this guy's heart like by like not being with him, even though he's super nice, but like we don't really have any connection here. That whole car ride, it was super uncomfortable and like tense, just based on like the way the dialogue is cut. And like they play with like sound a little bit, like on the mixing. Like sometimes he's really muffled or sometimes she's really muffled, and like, and it's just like super disorienting.
I think that's just like them trying to get across the whole like fantasy thing. Because like think about like when you like recall memories in your mind, like sometimes even your mind can be kind of like you'll like misremember things, or like things will be jumbled, or you're not remembering things how it really happened.
Yeah. Well, because everybody has their own interpretation of like their memories. Like there's one of my favorite quotes is it's not really a quote, but like there's a movie. I'm sorry, I'm gonna take a tangent, but there's a movie I really loved when I was a kid called holy shit, it's like it's leaving me right now. But it's about Ben and Toss Pappas, and they were Australian skaters during the Tony Hawk era of vert skating.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with this at all.
It's God, what is that movie called? It'd be a Google question. But anyway, at the beginning of the movie, it's a documentary about those two brothers, and they got in a lot of trouble, and one of them killed himself, and then one of them went to jail for many years. And it was during the time that like I think it was called like I can't remember what the trick was. I'm not super knowledgeable. It was like a 1080 or something. It's like doing like a 360 in the air, you know, like
going more than a 900.
Yeah, or it's like a 900. I think that's what it was called.
Oh yeah,
like when he first landed it, they were both trying to do that. But at the beginning of the movie, he says, "There's your side, my side, and the truth." It's like everybody has their own. It's called All This Mayhem. Yeah, it's really good. It's a documentary from 2014. You would really love it.
I like skating related shit.
Yeah, it was like at my height of my attempt to be a skater boy. But I really loved that. I watched it a ton.
I think a lot of us have been there.
Oh, at least a lot of us white guys definitely have been there at some point in our life.
I'm hoping if I hopped on a board right now, I could still like
do an ollie,
or pop shove it or something.
I broke my ankle pop shoving, or like re-sprained my ankle trying to learn that trick again, because like I took a break after breaking my ankle.
I never had any skating related injuries except for like cuts and bruises and shit like that.
Getting your shins whacked in with your board. Yeah, it's always fun.
Getting hit in the nuts trying to do, a flip trick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was never very good. There's a reason I didn't keep going.
There's a reason we don't skate anymore. Yeah, just like how your memories can be very like misleading, and like your reality may be different than like someone else that's like within that memory and stuff.
Yeah.
That kind of shit. It's like weird knowing that like, since Jake is the janitor though, like this girl, it doesn't exist. Also, we should preface that too. Like I said, we didn't really mention that. She doesn't exist.
I wouldn't say it's quite that she doesn't exist, but like it's someone that he met at some point in his life and like didn't take the chance to get with her. Cause like there's dialogue later in the movie when they're like at the dinner table and they're like, how'd you guys meet? And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, at a trivia night or something.
And then it changes later throughout the movie, like, oh, we
they're-
met at like a bar, or like she's a waitress.
Yeah, the story keeps changing. And I think it's like he either never talked to this girl in real life, so therefore she's like a blank slate to him. So he can think of what she looks like, but he's like filling in all the details on his own, because this is like a fantasy kind of.
Yeah.
Because like her occupation changes, or like the things she studies, her interests change.
He's like, what would our lives have been like, or like how would we have met? What would be the things that we did, or like what are our interests that we share?
Like it's not a relationship that like went sour. I think it's like what could have been.
Yeah.
And he's at this point in his life as the old man, the janitor, like he didn't accomplish what he wanted to in life. So he's like filling in all these things.
Yeah.
It's really it really is complicated.
There's a lot that we're gonna miss too, as far as like media scattered throughout and stuff, and like that application on his fantasy and stuff.
There's a lot of references to poems, art, movies, plays. I mean, like the play Oklahoma has like a big part in this movie. Kind of, they kind of like not quite hint. They kind of say that like Jake filled his life with like media as a way to like get over his like loneliness or something. So that's why a lot of the dialogue in this movie is like from poets and movies and all that.
And I didn't catch that until the end too. Like, it didn't make any sense to me upon first like viewing, because it's like I don't have any reference to this media anyway. There's a spot in the movie where like the janitor, like this is one of the parts littered throughout, where like during dinner where the janitor is watching a movie on one of the projectors while he's taking
actually.
Yeah. And like it like you're like whipped into a movie inside of a movie, a little movie inception for you.
Yeah.
And like that was like the reference to the diner later on too.
God, there's so many layers to this.
There's
with even just that little movie that he watches, there's like references sprinkled throughout the movie.
Yeah.
It's hard talking about a movie within a movie.
Yeah. But like the point being that like the media is playing a role on Jake's fantasy.
Yeah.
And like books and poems, and like the poem that she recites is a poem that's in a book in his bedroom.
This is actually like one of like the rare instances of humor I found in the movie. Like Jake is like trying to prompt her to like read a poem, and she's like, it's like barely finished. Like, I guess I can read it for you. And then she goes into this devastatingly long 3-minute monologue. It's just so out of place. What's happening?
We're about to hit 30 minutes. I was just gonna let you know. Like, we can take a little break here and we can get into the dinner. But like, let's just say before we hop into it, we arrive at the farm at the beginning of the movie, like that 40 minutes after the car ride and stuff. And Jake like takes her out to the barn first before like they go into the house. And
this is one of the things I actually don't understand a whole lot.
I don't know if it's like just to misguide you or whatever throughout the movie, but it felt like very unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like he just is like basically explaining like life is hard on a farm. Sometimes the animals die and shit. And like you get a reference to like a pig. They had to like, the pigs didn't survive because like one of them had maggots in its belly and shit.
Lucy makes some comments about like the sheep in the barn. Like, oh, look at them. Like they do the same thing every day. It must be so lonely.
Such a sad existence.
And I'm wondering like if that's a commentary on like humans in a way or something. Like,
or that it could be a reference to Jake. He's doing the same shit every day.
Yeah.
And basically like the mom is like waving in the window for like 5 minutes, and like then Jake takes her out to the barn. Lucy's like, why don't we just go inside? It's cold and shit. Like it's snowing.
Yeah.
He's like, well, I'll give you the unabridged tour and shit. And like this is the part of the movie where it's like, I thought Jake was gonna be like some weird psycho killer because like he was kind of finding humor in some of the shit they were talking about in the barn, like being like talking about like the animals dying and shit.
He was like really detached talking about it. Like, yeah, it just happens. You know?
Yeah, and it's like, well, okay, like life on a farm is hard. But we'll come back and we'll talk about the dinner and shit, and like this is where shit like really starts rolling.
I guess we should take a quick break, refill my beer, and
I'm halfway. I can finish it before we start.
All right,
see it.
Piss break.
All right, we're back. We're having a beer change.
Yeah, awesome. This is the beer that you chose.
It's Urban Artifact. Just one of the first beers I bought when I was 21. I got like I think it's called Spyglass, and it's like a lemon. That's the lemon tart.
Oh, that's the
that
one I
you-
tried.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like that little blue can. But they make fruit, like pretty much fruited beers, and this is called the Gadget. It's raspberry blackberry.
I'm usually not a big fan of like fruity tasting beers, but this legit.
Holy shit! Yeah,
It's thick looking, right?
holy shit! Yeah, this shit looks like kind of like wine. It
Tastes
has the
better than
consistency
wine
of
to
wine.
me.
Really?
Yeah, I think it.
Oh, it smells like amazing.
I would drink this over wine any day, probably.
It smells like berries, like the most natural berry you can think of.
It tastes like they legit just squeezed blackberry and raspberry into a glass. I'm very hungry right now, so if my stomach growls make it onto the recording, I apologize.
I don't know if it'll pick it up, but I could hear it.
That was a loud one. I haven't eaten in a couple
Dude,
hours.
holy shit, this stuff is dense.
Yeah, it tastes good though.
It smells like if you had a bowl of raspberries and blackberries sitting right in front of you, that's what you'd have right in front of you.
Oh wow, this is 8%.
Yeah.
This is stronger than the Elliot Ness Great Lakes shit.
That is so good.
I like it.
This is going to be the ones that I pick up on the regular now for sure. That's delicious. Okay.
Where we last left off, we were talking about the barn scene with Jake and Lucy. I feel like up until this point, the movie like has still been rooted in reality a little bit.
For sure.
After this scene, Jake and Lucy go into his parents' house, and I feel like this is where things start to become like detached from reality.
Because they don't like come greet him, like they don't come greet the couple or anything. And now that we know that like they're not, this is actually happening. It's like, is Jake in his head like thinking about trying to figure out how the hell their parents are gonna like meet?
I was thinking that like the moment of like your significant other coming to meet your parents is like kind of like a tense moment in a relationship. So maybe like when they get there, it takes like 5 minutes for the parents to come downstairs. So I'm wondering if that's like Jake prolonging it. He's like his mind doesn't want to like go there yet. So they keep sitting in the living room, like he's like his mind's like putting it off the whole time.
Yeah, or like how am I gonna imagine how would they meet? Or like Lucy is like, what the fuck? Like why haven't they come down yet? But it's like it's kind of like this third wall break that like not like a break, but like since we know that like at least Lucy isn't like actually there or like this isn't actually happening, like the character of her, like the character is wondering like what the fuck is happening. Like does it kind of make sense?
Yeah, she's questioning the reality of it at this point in the movie.
She'll question reality as far as we go on for sure.
She does, but like not to the extent that you would think, because as things get weirder, like she kind of like accepts what's happening in a weird way.
As like normal, yeah. It's super odd because like if you think about it, the way the book is written, like I don't know this, but like if you had to think like this is gonna like you're still getting the same big reveal at the end of a book like that we get at the end of this movie. It's like the character in the book is like wondering if she's real or not at the end. You know, I don't know. I'd love to know how it's written for sure. Maybe I'll like. I would read a couple years.
I would read this book probably.
Like we get the dog that like
this is super weird too.
This is a super weird part, and this is where I thought like there's some weird paranormal shit happening in the house because like the dog doesn't stop like shaking.
Yeah,
like shaking off water. You know how a dog will shake like that? It like keeps doing that, and then like the dog disappears at times. Like it's not even there. Like there's another part in the movie where like she pets the dog again, and then like it like cuts to where it's not even there. And it's like, so we're like, is the dog dead? And like later, like the dog is dead kind of thing. Or like it was Jake's childhood dog.
You see his like the dog's jar of ashes in Jake's bedroom.
Exactly.
Yeah, a lot of weird hints.
Yeah.
Littered throughout here.
But I didn't get it at all. Like
I missed it on my first viewing.
Really?
I didn't see the jar of ashes.
Well, and like even in Jake's bedroom, there were all these references that they were making littered throughout on like virology and like poem.
She picks up a book and starts reading out of it, and it's the poem that she recited earlier in the movie.
Yeah, and it's like she knew it so well, kind of thing. I don't know. It's just like to me, it felt very. I don't know. I felt like there was just this like thing coming that like there was going to be some sort of like paranormal twist of like like there's a monster in the house that's like making all this shit happen type deal, but like it never that never was the thing.
I would have hated it if that's the direction it went in, I think.
Yeah.
That would have been like too cliche or not really my style, I guess. I feel like there's some kind of like deep rooted trauma or like hatred for his parents, or like there's like he has a weird relationship with his parents. I think the way that they're portrayed together, like because like this is like his like memory and fantasy like combining. His parents are like their negative flaws are like turned up to 11. Do you know what I mean? Like they're
the way
really irritating.
Yeah, and they also like I wrote down like he hates them. Like Jake hates his parents.
Yeah.
Because like the way like they're introduced to him, like to her, like even at dinner they're like talking like, oh my Jake, or she's like, oh my Jake, and like
talk to him like he's like a baby still.
Yeah, and he like is really irritated by that.
Mm-hmm.
And it like this is one of those spots where I thought like, oh my god, like maybe Jake's the bad guy.
Yeah.
Or either they're the bad guy and like Jake is like doing the best that he can to like not show that to her. If Jake's the bad guy, he's the controlling his parents or whatever. Like we should say that like the dad comes down old, and then
they're both little age.
Yeah.
The first time you see him.
And then like they keep, but like this is one of the spots like when they go to dinner,
they get a little bit younger.
They get a little bit like at least the dad gets younger. He comes down like kind of old and gray haired, and like but then he's a little bit more youthful. Mm-hmm. Or maybe he gets older. I think he gets older at dinner.
I can't remember actually.
I can't remember either, but let's just say his age changes. And it was like, I immediately noticed it, like, what the fuck? Like, wait, did that just happen? And kind of like Lucy's like also notices. And it's very, very odd.
This is definitely where reality starts to become really abstracted.
It's a very like time doesn't start to make sense at this point. And like even when they go to walk in for dinner, like when she's like, okay, like her mom's like, oh, I don't want the food to get cold or food set on the table or whatever. Like it's like they automatically like just fucking pop into the fucking dining room and like
there's just like extravagant meal.
Waiting there. Yeah, it's very odd.
If you caught it when Lucy and Jake are in the car for the first time heading to his parents' house, he makes a comment like, we should get a snack on the way because my mom is ill and she doesn't cook very much anymore. Like he says something like that.
Yeah.
And then they get there and then she's like
huge meal.
Yeah. So there's a lot of time jumping.
And like stuff that doesn't really have like the continuity doesn't make sense of like what he's saying and what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And like you're like wondering if like what she's sick with. And like I remembered that in the car and like thinking like it's like she's sick, like is there like a demon in that? Like that's what I'm like that my mind kept going to like what the fuck is happening like in this. Like I thought since I noticed the label of horror, like psychological horror and shit, I'm like, what is the horror aspect of this movie?
Yeah.
And it just never came. And it didn't, I mean it came for sure. Like it was, there's some fucking weird disturbing parts, but like I thought, I'm like, is time gonna like, is she gonna be like trapped in this house forever? Even like later in the movie I thought like that was the thing.
I thought the whole movie would take place in the house at that point. And it doesn't. I mean, they only stay there for like 30-ish minutes, maybe. Yeah, Jake's parents are interesting, the way they're portrayed. His mom is like very overbearing and like not very intelligent because she's like, oh, I heard your girlfriend studies quantum psychics. Like he gets really annoyed at his mom not knowing stuff. And she's like, I love playing the game. I can't remember, like something Genius Edition. Yeah. And he's like, Mom, it's Genus Edition or something like that.
Yeah.
And the dad is like really dismissive of like Lucy's art. Like he's like, she's showing him like paintings on her phone. And he's like obnoxiously like, I don't get it. I don't. Like I can't understand a painting unless a person's in it.
Yeah. Or something. And she was talking about like the way a landscape makes you feel. I mean, it makes sense too because it seems like his dad gets dementia or some form of like Alzheimer's later on, and like so it makes sense of why he wouldn't understand because like even at that point he's like old. Remember, he's old in this dinner scene.
He's like decently middle aged at this point,
and it's not like shit's just not clicking with him as good.
I'm either thinking it's that or like Jake's insecurity about his parents. They just come across like obnoxious and like jerks in the scene. Like it's like like he's imagining like the worst case scenario of like you bringing your significant other to go meet your parents. Like they're like the worst they could possibly be.
And her mom makes these faces at Lucy at times, or like it's just like has this disgust like hanging on her face at times. It makes sense if you put it in the frame of how you said like this would be the worst way to imagine it. Like in a fantasy world, like would my mom act this way or this way?
Yeah.
And there are times when like his parents are loving throughout later, like even, or at least a little bit more sympathetic, or like it gets blended, because at this point in the movie, you don't realize like what's actually happening, like the fantasy. And so like at first time viewing, you're like, what the fuck is going on? Like I was trying so hard to answer any questions I had, and like I was just getting more questions.
That's probably the wrong way to go about it, which is what I was doing on my first viewing too.
It was like hard though, because it just didn't make any sense. Like it's just hard to not wonder what the fuck is going on.
The continuity stops making sense completely around this part of the movie. Lucy keeps getting these like weird phone calls
from like, sometimes it's Lucy,
like it's like under her own name,
or like Louisa, or like Yvonne or something.
Yeah, she doesn't answer it until after the dinner scene. But like one of the times that she steps away to go look at the phone, when she comes back, like the dinner is already cleaned up and like everybody's out of the dining room.
Yeah.
And she's like, hello, is anybody here? So that's like an example, I guess, of like one of the weird time skips, because she goes to what?
I was gonna say, the phone call is not a woman or anything, not one of her friends. It's
the old man.
It's Jake. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, I got one answer or question for you. It's like weird as fuck. Like it didn't make any sense. And she's like, oh, she was just wondering how I am and if we got here, because the blizzard and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like thinking to myself, what the fuck? Like, how does that go unnoticed?
This is like one of the things that actually bothers me about the movie. When you watch a movie, you usually want like a protagonist to like get behind.
Yeah.
Like if Lucy was reacting as realistically as she should to these like absurd splits in reality.
Yeah.
You'd be like more invested in her. But like parts like that right there, where she she doesn't question the weird phone calls she gets, you can't invest in her as much because she's not reacting the way the audience should. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And like, because again, to my point, you like there is something at play here in the house, and it's like, well, Lucy's already going along with it type of thing. And to me, it's like, I'm like, is she already like gonna be stuck here forever type of deal? Because like that was one of the things I'm going towards. We shouldn't forget like the basement at the beginning when they walk in. Like Jake doesn't like going in the basement. There's like scratches on the wall.
This is something that doesn't really make sense to me in like the film version. I'm wondering if like the book like went more into depth about it, but it's not really ever the basement. His fear of the basement's never explained.
I thought the basement was like, that's where the monster is type deal.
Yeah. I was thinking that too, or like that's where they put the bodies or something.
Or like maybe his parents aren't fucking real and they're like some sort of like weird paranormal shit.
Yeah.
And like that's what I was kind of going to, because they keep changing age and shit. And like, I don't know. It's very odd, like all this shit to be happening. And like you said, if Lucy's not questioning it, it's like, well, what's at play type of deal. And that was my whole thing too, is because she starts going along with shit. Because like even in like the sitting room, like when they eat dessert and shit, it becomes more clear to me that like she's along for the ride. And then there are at times where it breaks again. She's like, I want to leave. Like we need to get going. And it's just like it's hard to like tell what she wants as a character.
I agree. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And like it was really confusing. And like obviously since it's not real, it makes sense. But like upon first viewing, it's like, like
what the fuck's going on?
What the fuck? Yeah. That's one of my biggest things. Like that's one of my biggest complaints is like I don't know if the movie does enough on the first viewing to want to go back and watch it a second time.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a hard movie to get through. In the scene that follows the dinner, did you catch when they're all talking on the couch? Jake's dad makes a comment about like Jake's mom, and he's like, she was such a funny soul. I miss her so bad, even though she's sitting right there. I feel like that's just another like distortion of like the timeline of his memory and fantasy.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it makes sense though.
Like, I mean, both his parents are dead in the modern day of
him being old as fuck.
Janitor Jake. But like them switching ages, and sometimes they're dead, and sometimes the dog's alive, and sometimes it's dead. Like
I don't want to get too deep into like trauma or anything, like go too deep on the podcast. But like, if you think about it, like we all got our own fucking issues. It's abundantly clear, and like we all have our own reality. But like when you think about shit like that, like shoulda, woulda, coulda, or like memories and like stuff like that, I feel like a lot of it is like jumbled around at times. Like there are things that have happened in my life where I'm like, oh, if I would have done this, and then like I get another hint of I get another memory come up, and it's like, oh, then this shit is going on in my head type of deal. I'm gonna do hypothetical. This shit doesn't exist, but like, say like my uncle drowns on a boat or some shit, or like, you know, he's out fishing one day and he dies or whatever. And then like I'm thinking about that, and then like I'm cutting to like, oh, remember that one time at that barbecue when me and my uncle did this, or yada yada. That doesn't exist, but like, do you understand like how your mind would jump from like point to point like throughout time and like your memory? That's kind of like the frame that Jake the janitor is having within the house, if that makes sense. Because like we're going from like how you said like the dad's like, oh, I miss her. The mom obviously dies before the dad. But then like later on we get to see that the dad definitely has dementia. Like as we get to go after dinner, there's labels throughout things now.
So he can remember like
So he
what
can
room
remember
is
shit.
which.
Yeah.
This part gets really weird. Like when she goes upstairs to look for Jake, that's when she goes into his bedroom and finds the poem that she read earlier.
Yes.
You know, the dog's ashes and all that. Did you notice when she was looking at his like little bookshelf, all of the CDs had labels like futile attempts at success and like unforgivable mishaps? It was like
that.
it was like the CDs were like
they had like
memories.
strips on them and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's I didn't read them, but I remember like shit being like that. Yeah. There was like almost like these like beige, like tan table.
Like they all had like the same label on them.
Yeah.
Or like same color label.
Yeah.
Basically.
And like the bedroom is named Jake's childhood bedroom. Which doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you do that type of deal?
Yeah.
But like almost like that's his bedroom being labeled in his head. Like this is Jake's childhood bedroom. And like I texted you today during this part of the movie and I was like, dude, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And I was like, because the dad says like talks about the bed. He's like, if you two want to stay here tonight or whatever. And like talks about like fucking and shit. He's like this bed ain't made for fucking or whatever.
You can only fit one child. It ain't made for fucking.
Yeah. He's like, me and my wife like aren't too traditional about that. Like we don't really give a fuck. And she's like, we're not staying. And he's like, yeah, this bed ain't made for fucking. And like it was so I was like, what the fuck is happening, dude? Like I was like so confused. And I want to read. I want to see what I wrote. I said, what is happening in this movie? I said, this bed ain't made for fucking. Like, it was so odd, like, for the dad to say that kind of thing. Like, it didn't make any sense. And, like, maybe that would be something he would say in his old age of, like, just, like, not really realizing how that would make someone feel.
He was already kind of crude beforehand.
Yeah.
And, like, now it's, like, just turned up.
Yeah,
to the max.
So fucking. I was. This was the one part of the movie I was actually laughing. Like, what the fuck is happening here? It was still really uncomfortable though. But like that was a little bit of a comedic to me to like hear him say that. It was just funny.
I can't remember exactly when it happens in the movie. We were talking about it earlier, where like it goes to the janitor watching like a rom-com like on a projector.
Yeah,
I think like a really corny, like I don't want to explain the scene or whatever, but like it's like an over dramatic, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Of like romance or something.
It's like I love her and you're like type deal,
and
like that big finish at like the middle of the movie.
And like when Lucy comes back down from the basement after talking to Dementia Dad, the dad comes up to them with Jake and he's like, "Oh, who's this? How'd you guys meet?" And he's like, "She was the waitress. Remember, I ordered the Santa Fe burger,"
Which is
what happened in that little movie. Yeah. So it's like another example of like him filling his life with elements from movies and other media and all that shit.
Like I don't feel like I need to watch this movie a second time because we're expanding upon it so much. Because like those little things is like what you're gonna catch on the second viewing.
Yeah,
like it'll all make much more sense when you watch it the second time because you got all those references to begin with. But it's like it's difficult in the first viewing because of like it doesn't. You're so disoriented throughout that scene. And then like Jake's mom is like really, really, really fucking old.
Yeah, she's like in a wheelchair.
Like afterwards, yeah. And like he's like, and like the dad gets like the nightgown and shit at some point and has like Jake's baby food on it. It's fucking weird.
So many weird time skips or like elements of his life. Like like his dad's got dementia and then like his mom's really young at the same time. And like there's baby food on his fucking shirt. Like
yeah, and then
there's like so many weird timelines, hitting each other at the same exact time.
And like the mom is like dying at some point and like I think she takes the nightgown down to like the washing machine after the dad hands her the nightgown to wear like to bed and shit. Jake's mom is youthful.
Yeah,
And
she's
it's
like 20s or 30s.
Yeah, and it's like picking up Jake's toys and shit
Mhm.
in the sitting room. And she's like is going on this weird monologue about like you should live your life dangerously, and like Jake's controlling, and maybe I'm the one that caused that, but like what are you to do? We all have our own, and I'm just like what is happening here? And then like she's like, "Well, take that nightgown to the basement," and she's like, Lucy says, "Well, Jake says that I shouldn't go down in the basement," and she's like, "Well," basically saying like, "I don't give a fuck what Jake says. Live your life dangerously," and like.
Yeah.
So odd, and like, but then she ends up taking it down there.
I thought her going to the basement would be like more of like a realization, but it
Only
doesn't
adds
really.
confusion.
It doesn't really answer anything. Although, did you catch when she goes to put the nightgown in the laundry?
There you get the janitor outfits.
The janitor outfits in the washer.
And I caught that
Yeah.
because I'm like, these are jumpsuits basically, and I caught that, and this is where I like the part of the movie where I'm starting to like pull. I'm like, the janitor is tied to this somehow.
Yeah.
It was very vague, but I understood that like that's the high. They said RHS, which I assumed was a high school uniform.
Yeah.
Which I did catch that, and then you get to see the paintings that are done by Jake. The paintings that she was talking about were done by Jake, and then she goes and looks at her phone, and like her paintings that she was showing at dinner are gone. Like those albums are gone, which is another like not third wall, but like within the reference of the movie, like kind of breaks. Like the character's like, "Where the fuck is my paintings?" Very, very odd. Even at this point in the movie, I'm like, okay, so what is Jake filling in here? Or like what? I was really lost still. I mean, I was still lost, and I understand now, but like upon viewing, I'm still really lost in like, why did she show those paintings if they weren't hers? Is Jake the mass? Like then I'm thinking Jake is the bad guy. Like Jake is the one pulling the strings around here, like making everyone confused and shit. And like that was like where I'm like, oh, I gotta hold on to now. Like I know what the fuck's going on, and like and then
the movie says "fuck you."
Fuck you, yeah. Even when I thought I was like getting it, I was like, damn, I don't understand what the fuck is happening here. Piss break. Jesus, this movie makes you feel so like existential.
Awesome. This fucking tart beers light me up like really fast.
Is it really?
Yeah, like abnormally fast.
You're not uncomfortable yet, are you?
Oh, I'm good.
It's dense. Like I was just thinking that as I was pouring it. It's just basically like taking shots on top of beer, which only like weighs down the beer. I don't know if there's like any science to that, but it's always like been told to me like if you like drink liquor on top of your beer, you'll have like a bad time.
I've always heard that. What's the phrase? Beer before liquor, never been sicker. Liquor before beer, you're in the clear.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know if there's any science to that, but I've always heard that. I mix them all the time with no regard for safety.
Same, but like you remember you ever seen like those experiments where you put like water and like oil, you put the oil on top of the water and like the liquids will sit on top of each other in a glass. Like if you pour water and then like vegetable oil on top of it, basically it'll like. No. I don't remember exactly how it works, but
is it like different depending on what order you do it in?
Like the density, yeah.
Huh.
Like I think the water will go in the oil, but the oil will like lay on top of the water. I'm not 100% that's accurate, but this beer is basically like it's almost like a jam consistency of like wine, like even thicker than wine almost.
Yeah, this shit's strong.
It's good though.
I will persevere though.
Are you almost done with yours?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I haven't got through all mine yet. We'll survive, Getter. We'll just be lost at the end of this, like at the rest of the film.
I've got more beers in me, After this podcast ends, the party don't stop.
The party never stops, Getter. They like put the chains on the car and they leave. And they puts the chains on the tires and fucking we get rolling down the road in the blizzard.
And got like another 30-minute dialogue scene in the car.
Exactly. This is the part of the movie where I'm like, this is where the movie really felt like it was slowing down. Like I was like, man, like not that I was getting bored. I mean, I was bored. I shouldn't like try to sugarcoat it. I was like bored.
That's okay. Yeah. This entire scene is them arguing about like a movie and like a review and shit. Like they're like it's like you're just like kind of like watching in on this couple argue about this fucking stupid thing.
And her like personality changes a little bit too, which like only confused me more, obviously, upon first viewing.
Her demeanor changes a lot. She
like starts smoking.
Yeah, which you haven't seen up until this point in the movie.
When it doesn't make any sense and there's like no like reference to it at all. Like I was expecting him to be like, when did you start smoking? And like it never came. And
I think they're talking about like a certain movie during this part, and I'm pretty sure that she starts reading, like she starts talking, but like her dialogue is taken straight from a review of the movie that Jake read. Even her demeanor and like
voice changes.
She's like, it was one of the books on Jake's shelf in his bedroom of like some movie critic or something.
Exactly.
So like she takes up the demeanor and the words of this fucking critic.
They're like her, and then like they'll just like go into a different conversation and like it doesn't acknowledge like the conversation keeps changing.
Yeah.
And like the tone and the mood of the like the car ride keeps changing.
Did you notice that the actress that plays Lucy is replaced for like 5 seconds by the woman in the rom-com that the janitor was watching?
Really? I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, like
maybe I just missed it at some point.
Like the camera pans over to her in the driver's seat, and it's like a different actress. It's that actress from that fake movie.
I tell you what, I had my headphones on while watching this. Like I had some over ears for my PC and stuff. I watched them, and I got up and I had a little bit of laundry sitting on my bed, folded up, and so I knew it was just a dialogue part. I started putting clothes away in the closet. So I bet this is that part where I missed a little bit.
Small little visual things.
Yeah,
like that.
I knew I was gonna miss a little bit of that. I was like, I didn't want to stop watching, but I was like, man, I should put this up real quick before I forget.
I didn't catch it on my first viewing.
Really?
Either. No, not at all.
It's like super dark and like I don't know. It's like there's a lot like in cinematography. I feel like there are like points that you look at in a movie that like draw your attention in, and it's just like the tone and the color of the scene is like just so dark and dim. It's like hard to have any like real focal point. Some of these parts, so maybe like another reason why we could have even missed it. There's like a lot of like it's just mostly dialogue. So like maybe that's why I just didn't pay attention as hard.
I mean, like the first time I saw this movie, this was around the time that like my attention was waning really badly.
Yeah.
On my second viewing, I was watching a lot more closely during this scene.
You were trying to look for you were probably trying to look for shit that you may have like you were trying to connect to the reveal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this entire like dialogue in the car is pretty much just them arguing about weird shit.
Or like, did you like my parents? They liked you, type of deal.
Yeah,
so odd.
And he calls Lucy Ames for a second, and she's like, Ames, what is that short for?
It's not my name.
Yeah, this
is one of the spots where like, what's this girl's real name?
Like the lack of continuity is like even making the fantasy character like question like, hold on a second, like my name's not Ames.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
Because I feel like the whole movie is framed within Lucy too. Like she's the main character in my opinion, so it's like kind of weird to see her like question her own
purpose of reality.
Yeah, what oh shit, like what is my character's purpose? Like who am I? Type of deal, which made me feel more lost as well. Because like my whole frame of reference, like I don't have a whole lot of frame of reference to begin with, and like me trying to pin like her as the main character only becomes more disorienting at this point. And they end up stopping at like what's it called? Like it's basically like a Dairy Queen,
like Tully Town or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
or Tulsi Town.
Tulsi Town.
Yeah, Tulsi Town. They pass it on the way in.
This is weird.
This is a weird part
because they just ate dessert and it's like the middle of a blizzard, and he's like, "Let's stop for ice cream."
And he's like, "What better time for ice cream than in a blizzard?" And even me, I'm thinking like, "What?" Like, no logical human being is like, man, let's stop for ice cream right now. Like, we can barely see where we're driving.
This is actually like one of my least favorite parts of the movie. When they go to the dairy place.
Well, there's a lot I have questions about for sure. Like, there's a few lines of dialogue that confuse me. We probably should preface that even throughout the movie, we're still getting little droplets of the janitor, and like he like likes the plays and stuff. Like you can see that the janitor is like cleaning up like after school type deal for like musical rehearsal and stuff in this auditorium, and like
the school is doing Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Or whatever, which is the play he likes a lot.
And the girls like look at him like he's disgusting and stuff. And then these girls work at the Tulsi Town. God, this gets so like it's fucked up knowing what's happened and everything. But like these girls like basically look at him like ha ha ha. Like I can't believe this fucking guy is like showing up here. Like they won't serve him basically. Like they're like teasing him and like bullying him basically. And like then Lucy, the woman, has to order from like this girl with like seems like rashes all over her arms and stuff, and she's really like nice and friendly.
I see this as like Jake likes this one girl because she seems like the outcast, like he is.
Yes,
or whatever.
exactly. And like she's really like can like actually talk to him and like can understand and shit. And like Jake even makes reference to like, oh, I remember like when I was in high school, like there's parts of dialogue where he's like, I can see people like they carry like their past around with them and like that shit stays with them. And like he's like talking about like when I stop at the supermarket and shit. And like that is like littered throughout of like disorienting dialogue and stuff.
The girl with the rash makes a weird comment about
The varnish,
which I can only assume makes more sense in the book.
Exactly, because they're talking about like a smell.
Yeah,
And she's like, sorry about the smell. It's the varnish. Like talking about like they're varnishing like shelves and shit. And it doesn't make any sense though.
I can only think that maybe like in real life, like Jake being a janitor maybe uses varnish on the job, and like that smell creeps in because he's like smelling it in real life.
Yeah.
And like it makes its way into his fantasy.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of that would make sense though.
And she even makes a comment like, I should tell you that that's not really what that smell is. And like, it's so odd. Like, it doesn't really make sense. And that's like one of the questions I have of like, like, what is the smell? I'm thinking like, oh, is there like dead bodies in the back or some shit? Like, this is where, because I still haven't got that answer at the end of the movie. So like, I'm like, what is actually happening? Like, I'm waiting for that reveal of like, where's the fucking killer, man? And it just never comes.
You're so about this killer thing.
Dude, I'm like, the whole time I'm thinking like, where's the demon? Where's the killer? Where's the fucking, Satan or whatever? It never happens. I'm expecting like some Conjuring or like Paranormal Activity shit happens.
That's the shit I was wondering up until like they left the house. And then like after that I was like, I have no idea what's going on. I don't think it's like a serial killer anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not watching reality in any way.
Then they get like these ice cream. The ice cream is their next plot device. Jake like doesn't want the ice cream to like get all over the cup holders, so like he's like
all of a sudden he doesn't want to eat it.
Yeah.
They just fucking bought it.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, it's really sweet. I don't want any. And then she's like, what? You're not going to eat that? And he's like, well, it's really sweet. And she's like, yeah, it is really sweet. I don't want mine either, basically. And it's like so odd. Like her whole like mood is changing, which makes sense because like basically Jake is like shoulda, woulda, coulda type deal, even in this part of the movie. Like, yeah, like what? Like how would these conversations go? So they end up like he's like, well, we'll just look for somewhere to throw them away. And she's like, well, I'd really love to go home. Like she still has like that. You've seen Get Out, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to go, like, I'm ready to leave type deal. And he's like, okay. And then he's like, well, wait, hold on a sec. And I'm thinking like
keeps getting prolonged.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
And I'm thinking to myself, and she keeps saying like, back to the farmhouse. She's like, no, back to my house. And he's like, okay, yeah, I get it. Like really odd. Jesus Christ.
So they go to the high school to throw away the ice creams or whatever. Jake has an interesting like tidbit of dialogue when they're approaching, and he's like, yeah, this is where I spent many, many tortured years. And he starts naming off like, yeah, this building's got 47 classrooms, 7 bathrooms, like blah, blah, blah. Which is something only a janitor would probably know about the building.
Exactly. And this is the part of the movie where shit started to come together a little bit. Like, oh, Jake's the fucking janitor. And I'm thinking at this point in the movie, like maybe time for Jake, or like even in this reality that we're in, is like non-linear. And like we're just caught in the middle of all these different things happening, like in time, like things that have happened.
Yeah.
Like, and that was my frame of reference going back to like the mom getting old, the dad getting old, the mom dying, stuff like that, the dog dying. I'm like, oh, like maybe time just isn't linear, and like Lucy's caught in the non-linear like time that we're living.
That's a good theory.
Like that's what I was thinking at the time. I was like, oh, Jake's the janitor, because I thought to myself like, oh wait, only the janitor is gonna know there's got like this many bathrooms, this many lockers, this many rooms, one auditorium, one whatever. And I'm thinking like, okay, Jake is the janitor, and I'm like, okay, like shit's making sense now. I'm getting it. I'm like I got to figure out how this is gonna play out for Lucy in the end though. But like Jake is like, someone's watching us. Like that's his move to like go inside the high school.
This part's really weird. Him and Lucy like share a kiss for the first time in the movie, which is like the first like sense of like intimacy that you see between these two characters.
Exactly.
And then you get a brief like a split second cut of like the janitor like looking through a peephole or something, which like makes me wonder like if he was like a weirdo, like.
And maybe that's why like the girls don't like him and shit, and they think he's fucking weird. Or like maybe he's just known to be a fucking weirdo throughout the school and shit, which makes sense. It makes sense in the grand scheme of things of the whole story. Like Jake lived this very unfulfilled life and like never took any of the chances, and like now he's like working at the school, and like maybe he's like a creeper, a pervert to like some of the students at the school. You kind of get these like littered throughout of like Jake's like an outcast, and like his mom even says like he never had any friends, yada yada. And Jake's even like, what's the fucking point of it, man?
We missed that point earlier when he's
What?
like talking to his parents, and she's like, Jake never had many friends. You had
Exactly.
friends at your 50th birthday, and he's like, you mean 20th?
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever.
Yeah, it's like weird. It's like, well, that also played with the time.
Yeah.
That's one of the parts of dialogue that just fucks your mind up. Like Jake seems so uncomfortable throughout that whole house, and like almost like he never acknowledged any of it either. So it just made it so confusing for us and even Lucy, or a woman, whatever her fucking name is.
Young woman, nameless narrator.
Yeah, dude. So like when we go inside the school though, you can see that there's a ton of fucking ice cream.
I'm glad you said this because I was about to bring this up.
Yeah.
It's like he's had this fantasy like hundreds of times before already.
Yeah. When this was shown to me, I was like, has Lucy been here before as well? Like, is Lucy just reliving this over and over again too? Like, even like on the drive home and stuff, I'm thinking like, is this scene one of many scenes that would have happened over many times visiting the parents? And like, there are times where she's like, oh, like it was a good meeting them for the first time. And like, there was times where I felt like she's been visiting them for years. And then seeing the ice cream cups in the dumpster, like, is that just showing that they've done this many times over and again?
That's what I'd like to think, at least.
Well, and I think, like, knowing how the movie ends and stuff, like, knowing that it's all a fantasy, it's like, how many times has Jake went to that ice cream place and put that shit in that dumpster? Lucy's, like, character's like, holy, like, because she notices the dumpster, too. And then she goes inside and is looking for Jake. The janitor, Jake, is there. And he's like, well, there's nobody here. It's weird. Mm-hmm. Like, obviously, this is Jake in the current time. He, like, offers her some slippers because he just mopped the floors. He's like, well, here, why don't you put these on? Mm-hmm. And these are the slippers that he offered her, like, when they first arrived at the house and stuff.
Yep.
Also, I noticed that he had thermoses in a drawer next to the door, next to the front door. I don't know if you caught this, but there's like thermoses, and he puts one of the thermoses away when they get there, like he lives there. Mm-hmm. I noticed that. Like,
I didn't notice that.
I was thinking to myself, like, Jake lives here. Maybe Lucy doesn't know.
Yeah.
I noticed that when I first watched it. Like, he puts that thermos away in that drawer, like he knows where shit goes and like all that kind of stuff. And it's like that only plays into like Jake's current self as the janitor. That's where he puts his thermos away at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a good point. I did not notice that when I watched this.
Yeah, but he offers her the same slippers, and she's like, "No, keep them. They're yours." And he's like, "Well, it's safe here, and like if he's here, he's safe." Almost saying like, "This is my safe. Like the high school is safe for me."
When she's asking Jake the janitor, like, have you seen my boyfriend? Like when he answers her and says, what does he look like? He doesn't speak it. It like echoes in his mind.
Exactly.
Do you notice that?
Yeah, I did notice that. And I thought is he a ghost or something? Or like, is he not real?
And then Lucy goes on a diatribe about she doesn't remember what Jake looks like because
so unmemorable.
She only saw him one time at a thing, and like he kept staring at her. So that's like what makes me think like this relationship never existed.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
Yeah, it makes sense. And this is the girl that he was staring at across from the bar or whatever, wherever she fucking mentions, and is like, oh, he was so fucking weird. And I just gave him my number because, you know.
It's easier to say yes than it is to say no.
Say no.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like, this is that girl that like Jake really never got a chance with type deal. And like, this is that girl, like this is what maybe it could have been type of deal. And I still, even at this point, it wasn't really clicking with me. It's like, it's maybe super disorienting because I still have questions about what the fuck has been happening this whole time. And it was really hard to like put it all together, like in the moment, I guess. And he was even more
definitely.
It was even more disorienting because we get a cut to like these two lookalikes that are much more like, I don't know, like done up. Like they're like not more attractive, but like they're similar looking actors and actresses. Like one of them is like a more youthful woman, and then like Jake is like some tall, skinny, handsome man. And then they start dancing around, which is a callback to when Jake, the janitor, is like
watching the kids perform Oklahoma or practice it in the hallway.
Exactly.
Because they slam into the locker.
Exactly.
And the two done-up actors do the exact same thing as the kids did.
Yep.
Or whatever. And
it's weird because you get like Jake standing and her standing, and then these two characters walk in front of them out of seemingly nowhere, and then start performing like this musical number. It's very, very odd. And even like
this
now,
is really out there.
Even now, I don't get it. Like the whole point of the scene. Like maybe it's like it's
me either.
It's a visual, like it's trying to represent. Look, this is what Jake's fantasy is, and he wants this to be like in love.
This is like the rom-com version of what he thinks love should be.
Exactly.
And then like the dance number is interrupted by janitor Jake. I mean, like it's the different actor playing him now. It's just like the plot of the whole movie is like reenacted in 1 minute in a dance. The first time I saw this, I was like, what the fuck's going on?
Exactly.
Like, this is so odd. Weird choice to put a dance number at the end of the movie.
This is where like even I was like,
this is really out there.
I'm so lost. Yeah, I was so lost. Like I was like, even at this point in the movie, I'm like, what kind of drugs is going on in this movie? Like I was like, I don't get it. Yeah, like Jake, the actor janitor, like the musical number janitor, like is trying to like take Lucy away from, dancer Jake, and like really, really like confused. Like almost like Jake wants there to be some sort of musical play quality to his life. And like Jake, the janitor, like stabs and kills the
perfect Jake.
Perfect Jake, exactly. Yeah. And like maybe that's symbolic of your reality is killing your fantasy, and like it was so odd.
And then it gets even more odd because it jumps into, well, does the janitor suicide happen before he's on stage, like giving the speech? I don't remember.
I don't think he kills himself, like as far as like
with the janitor.
I
think he does kill himself.
Okay, we'll get to that. But like Lucy is like standing there, like the character Lucy is like standing watching this happen as like, and then like Jake, the janitor, is like sweeping up like the fake snow that has like been cast upon like the gym. Yeah, like Lucy like goes into like the auditorium. Mm-hmm. And like Jake is giving this weird speech like at the end of like a play, and like everybody's like painted in like old makeup. Very, very odd.
This part's really weird. The speech he gives is taken from a movie.
Yeah.
Called A Beautiful Mind.
Okay. I don't know this.
Have you heard of this movie?
No.
Russell Crowe. He's like playing like a mathematician with schizophrenia.
Okay.
He like accomplished great things even though he had like a mental illness and all this. Jake's like final farewell in his fantasy is like accepting some award for like the greatness that he could have accomplished. Yeah, I think like it's
exactly,
like
and
something like that.
His whole family's still there, and like he does like some weird musical number, and everybody's like clapping and like proud of him. And like I guess that's like people did like he just wanted to be accepted and like loved, and like he never really actually accomplished anything. And this is where the movie ends, though. Like the movie is done. Yeah, like basically at this point. Well,
we get the cuts of the janitor
in the truck
giving himself hypothermia.
Yeah,
basically.
Is that where he's
killing himself?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because Lucy says, how long does it take for hypothermia to set in?
Mm-hmm.
Back in the car when she's left there when Jake goes in. This part of this like last 15 minutes is like super disorienting.
Yeah, it's a lot of the fantasy part's like amped up with like the play and the dance number and all that.
Piss break. We left off on like hypothermia, Jake. Correct.
Yeah. I don't know what it is that like causes him to finally like go through with it, but he goes out to his truck and like just sits. I guess like one of the symptoms of hypothermia is like
hallucinations. Yeah,
like he starts hallucinating the Tulsi Town.
Some like sort of weird black and white drive-in, like
it's like a commercial, like an old commercial.
Yeah. That's what I mean, like drive-in. Like it feels like some sort of weird thing you see at the drive-in if you've ever been to one.
Yeah. He like starts seeing that, then he starts stripping his clothes off.
Mm-hmm.
because I guess another symptom of hypothermia is like you start feeling really hot. So like people like that are hallucinating and like delusional will like get naked even though they're like really cold in reality.
Yeah.
So that's why the janitor gets naked.
Oh, okay. This is making sense to me because at first I'm like, why the fuck is this guy getting naked?
In the movie, we see him like get out of the truck and like follow a
Cartoon pig. That's the maggot pig.
Yes, through like the hallways of the school. Now, this part right here, I have no idea if he ever really gets out of the truck. I think this might just be like straight hallucination.
I think it's
hallucination
because like he's like following the pig inside, basically. Then this is where we get that cut to like the auditorium. Jake's giving the speech.
That's right. Yeah, the acceptance speech.
Yeah. And like he gives that speech and like basically the movie like fades into like some sort of blue color, which this is like the brightest the movie fucking gets as far as like color goes. Like I don't know, it's just such a weird odd ending. But maybe like the blue filter is like him dying or
like,
something,
like freezing or something.
Yeah. And people are like covered in like old timey, like not old timey, but like everybody's covered in makeup. All these actors and actresses that we've seen littered throughout, like the actor for his parents and stuff, like and Lucy has like painted on like wrinkles and old age, and like the girls from the Tulsi town, like
the ice cream place.
Yeah. All these high schoolers and stuff like painted and Jake is painted like old lady or old, and his mom's painted like an old lady and stuff. And it's like really, really odd.
I didn't really get that like artistic choice right there.
I didn't either. Yeah, I don't know if it made any sense. Or like maybe
I'm sure there's a meaning, but like we're just like I have no fucking idea what it is.
Yeah, like because these are the people that Jake has labeled as the people in his fantasy, and like those are the point in times where like he's building the fantasy around, and like he doesn't know what they look like in old age, and like this is a way for like the audience, like the viewer, us to like see like this is indicative of like Jake being like given some weird ass speech and like think these are the people that have made my life as great as it is, and it's fucking weird. This movie's super like
it's so weird, man.
It's such an odd choice like to end the movie so like on like a false happy note.
But it's like for a man that filled his life with like media, like
and
him
fantasy.
Watching the rom-com, like that's like how he wanted his life to end.
Yeah.
Like here's his last hurrah, his great moment of acceptance or whatever. Although immediately after this, I mean, the last shot of the movie is his truck covered in snow, like knowing that he died afterwards.
Yeah. I thought like I didn't love this movie, like I didn't like think it was like some masterpiece, or like I didn't feel like I enjoyed it like to like some grand, I don't know. Like I definitely am not gonna like just sit here and recommend this movie to like anybody or anything. Like I feel like
I wouldn't either.
When I've seen what you recommended to fucking me, guy.
Yeah.
But just feel like this movie it just put me in a weird spot of like I said earlier, like it just created such anxiety for me throughout the day, and like I definitely am not gonna like forget this movie or anything. And like I maybe only recommend it to like somebody that I really feel like could like handle it or like at least attempt to understand it. I honestly kind of wish I didn't watch this movie. Like it fucking like dude, like it's fucked up my brain today. And I know for a fact I'm gonna carry it around with me for a couple days too. Like how I said earlier, like talking to my family, like it made me feel so fucking weird. Like just made me feel like oh my god, what does it mean? What does any of this mean? And like, am I wasting life or like kind of thing?
I completely get where you're coming from. I anticipated you having a reaction like this.
You fucking bastard.
And it was the same reaction that I had when I first saw it too.
That's okay. I'm not the only one.
I think just because like you said that you'll carry it with you for a couple of days probably. I carried it with me for a couple of days too.
Yeah.
And like that's why I recommended it. Like I was like, this would be interesting to talk about.
It's true.
Because I don't really know anybody else that's seen this. And
I don't know if I want anybody else to see this.
If you had to give it a score based on personal enjoyment or whatever.
Well, I'll tell you what, just because I'm generous, if I'm going to give it personal enjoyment, I give it like a 6 out of 10. Like as far as like captivation, like making me feel like I've accomplished something at the end of this movie. Like I didn't get that. Like I felt like this movie was a lot of work. But as far as like true attempt for symbolic and like true meaning in a movie, or like really pushing the extremes of symbolism, or like pushing the extremes of like deepness in a movie, this movie is like a 10 out of 10. It's executed in a way where like it's so disorienting and so tough on that first viewing. I don't know that it's like I don't want to return to this movie. I don't want to like go back and watch it again. Like I don't want to do that. Like it created such a terrible feeling for me. Like as far like just watching it as an experience was like hard. Like it hurt me like emotionally to watch the movie. It made me very uncomfortable and like confused and like it wasn't enjoyable as far as like I didn't have any like I don't know. It wasn't entertaining in a way that I want a movie to be entertaining.
Yeah.
Even in like really like I'm gonna reference it again for the millionth time, but like Whiplash, like you don't feel good at the end, but you kind of do feel good at the end. You feel good that he like has this beautiful drum solo or whatever, and like accomplishes greatness in front of all these people. But like at what cost? It was at the cost of this torturer and losing a girlfriend and like hating his life for a long period of time, and you don't know what happens afterwards, and like it creates like these questions at the end where like I'm curious about it, but like in this movie I'm only questioning like my reality, not just Jake's, but like we've talked about it off mic for a few minutes in between our breaks and stuff, but like how concerned should I be about the way my life is lived, because am I going to end up like Jake in the end? Not that it's not important to think about these things and stuff, like it's almost great to be blissfully ignorant. And that's why I wouldn't recommend this to everybody either. It's like there's some people that like if they really got the true meaning of this movie, like they would have wished to stay blissfully ignorant. Does that make sense? Sorry,
No. I get everything that you just said.
Like, can you imagine? Like, I'm not going to name any names or anything, but like there are people that I know in my life where just like I can see them in this in this character Jake as the janitor, like wishing they would have done more.
Like just like living like a purposeless existence and
like
whatever.
Exactly. Like this movie is like getting to me in a way over like you know me like obviously you know me more than this fucking microphone does, but like you know how I am in a way. Like I try to be extremely intentional about the things I do in my life. At least that's how I feel.
Yeah.
Like I do my best to stay extremely intentional about the way I act and do and be and live my life. This movie is only just enhancing that experience for myself in a way.
Maybe you got something positive out of it.
I mean, yeah, it's like, a good thing.
I will not waste my life and be janitor Jake.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
It does create anxiety too, because I'm extremely young in the grand scheme of things as well. So it's like I do have a lot of time to like live, and like there are things I haven't done yet. Like I'm not married. Like I do have a girlfriend, and you know that may be my future, I hope. But like, you know what I mean? Jake has lived such a purposeless life, and man, I just hope to God that like I don't see myself in Jake. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of philosophical like pondering in this movie, like existentialism and all that. And I mean, like I kind of came away with the same feeling. I mean, like I understand everything you said about it, like including your feelings about the film. I was expecting you to have that reaction. I was hoping that you'd be able to watch it a second time before we talked about it, but I think maybe it's interesting that like this podcast is like a recording of your first impression of the movie.
And also like since we're like basically recapping it, we are getting a lot of like, since you've seen it more than once, like we're getting a chance to like rebound off each other, and like I probably don't need to watch it a second time since we just fucking recap this whole goddamn movie.
Yeah.
Like if I watch it again, it's only from my personal experience of knowing what's happened. But we've already touched on a lot of like what the second viewing will show to a viewer anyway.
Yeah. And I'm sure I missed plenty of things.
Oh, we've missed a ton, like points of like what media creates, like everything you view also creates who you are and how you view reality. And like that's what Jake does throughout the movie. Like Jake has like basically his whole life, all those books and movies and poems he's read, like help create his fantasy, also which help create his reality.
Yeah,
which is another fucking hole we could go down. Obviously, we won't do that as far as time, but like the things we do help create the way we view our reality.
So you said like in terms of enjoyment, you'd give it like a 6 out of 10 or whatever, which I think is entirely fair. This movie is very challenging.
The critics, like on Rotten Tomatoes, like it's not always the best baseline for a review. Like get a general synopsis
or like hit or miss on RT. Yeah.
But like there's like a 80-something% as far as like critics go, and like a viewer rating is like 47%.
Oh yeah.
Which only makes sense to me. Like critics love this fucking movie. Like, oh, this is like a great venture into the psyche and stuff. And then I'm sure regular people are like, what the fuck did I just watch?
It's very love or hate. I mean,
Yeah.
like the reactions from people is gonna range like so drastically from like 1 out of 10 to 10 out of 10.
Exactly.
I'm a little bit in between. After seeing it twice, I think I would give it like a strong 7.5.
Yeah, somewhere near a 7 and 8.
Maybe a light 8. I think that like good art can be really challenging sometimes. I mean, like some of my favorite records are like things that maybe the first time I heard, I was like, this sucks, or like, what the fuck is this?
Radiohead.
Yeah, Radiohead,
which we've
like,
talked about.
Swans, Animal Collective, like random bands like that. This movie's kind of like that for me. I don't know. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody.
Exactly.
I think the common man or woman would hate this. It's a movie that requires like you to do homework after watching it, which is not everybody's cup of tea. But yeah, I'm glad that you had, thoughts at all about this movie.
Yeah. Like I thought I was gonna come away from it like super brain dead, but
Yeah.
like I think because you definitely gave me the impression that I would be too, which I definitely was at first, but then as I like started doing homework on it and stuff, it became more clear to me what had happened, and the puzzle pieces started laying into place after I had watched it.
From like an entertainment perspective, it's not a great film or anything.
No.
But I appreciate the amount of thought that went into like the symbolic elements. I think that Jesse Plemons is great in this movie. I think that Jessie Buckley, who plays Lucy, is like excellent in this movie.
I
Like,
I thought the acting was really, really good.
the acting was really good. I think the cinematography wasn't like too show-offy or anything. Like,
But,
it was kind of basic, but it like looked good most of the time.
And like the cuts were done very well to like show like the disorienting of time and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I thought that was done really, really well. And it created a lot of anxiety for me. Like just from like cutting to dinner, to the sitting room, to like the basement, to like outside, like snow falling in certain places and not in others, like shit like that created questions for me visually throughout. And the play with like I said earlier, like the sound mixing, just the way some of the sound was played throughout, like was also super disorienting and helped create like more of is very cohesive. Like the whole movie is just super disorienting, and it comes to, even that comes together cohesively, in a disorienting way, if that makes sense.
I can appreciate all the elements that came together to make this movie. I think that like just appreciating that makes me like it more. But to some people, it'll reek of pretentiousness, which I mean, this movie is pretty pretentious.
But like, does the pretentiousness come from not wanting to acknowledge the deepness of the movie?
I don't know. This movie's like calculus to me.
Yeah, like this is the critics' movie. This is the movie that the critics will love and maybe the viewers hate. Like I feel like there are movies that appeal to both, and this is not that. And then there are movies that appeal to the masses and that don't appeal to the critics. And there are always, this is the polar opposite of that. Like if we're talking comedy or rom-com or, action, blockbuster, Dwayne The Rock, fucking Rampage, that movie is like, shit's fuck. You toss that shit to the wind for the critics, but like, people that want to turn their brain off
might make 150 million in the box office or something.
But like to the masses, that's something they can turn their fucking brain off to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't got to keep going on about this forever.
Even though we definitely could.
We could. I feel like we've digested it about as good as we can in a podcast format. We might be approaching 2 hours on the on the thing here,
which is about the length of the movie anyway.
So we can transition here, Austin. I eagerly anticipate what your next recommendation is for the show.
I was thinking about this. I already told you that I didn't really know what my suggestion was going to be, but I honestly just didn't know like if I wanted to suggest this because I think it'll be challenging for you. It's a record.
Okay. Challenging?
And yeah. Well, I don't know if it'll be challenging. Okay, I'll tell you why I think it's challenging.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest we listen to Discovery by Daft Punk, which is a 2001.
Wow. Okay.
So
this will be challenging for me. I've never been able to get into Daft Punk like that.
So, and I figured that, and I like Daft Punk in a way of like I can enjoy them, and I've never really had a chance to like really visit them again because there was a time when I was younger where like when I was like introduced to them were like, oh my god, this shit's cool, like I kind of like this. And I remember like no one knew who the fuck they were. I remember showing my friends Daft Punk and they're being like, what the fuck are you listening to?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, shit, maybe this isn't cool. But like, it's a record from 2001. And I think it's a pretty like good, like middle of the road. This is before they did the soundtrack to Tron Legacy. And like they did their most recent album, which is like, was it like Random
Access Memories.
Access Memories. Yeah. So
I've heard songs off that one.
that one's a lot different than even this record. So we'll
I like songs off that one.
I do too. I really do. I enjoy that album a lot. But this one's a little bit more techno. It's 2001. It's early 2000s. It's like very clubby. But I thought it would be a different direction to take the podcast, and I think like there are not a lot of lyrics, so we'll have a chance to like kind of talk about it, and it'll probably be like a little bit more of a short and sweet podcast.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, like, this is probably a record that I like should have explored a long time ago. So like, that's a good idea. That's a good one right there.
I have been listening to them. I received a Tron pop figure for Christmas, and that made me revisit the Tron soundtrack, and then it started from there. So I think it'd be something interesting to talk about.
I'm ready for that, dude.
All right, we'll catch you guys later. Thanks for listening.
All right. Peace.